On behalf of So Mittal, I'll try and represent and try and communicate the message that he had for most of the IT companies here. Unfortunately, he could not join this delegation. He's been with us for the last almost 7 days now, and he had some pressing things and he had to go back. But he personally promised that he's going to come back to Kenya and exclusively spend time with most of you. There's a general perception that NASSCOM is mostly contributing towards large companies, but there is a big momentum and a big thrust being given by NASSCOM in the form of an initiative called NASSCOM Emerge, which is giving a lot of focus and emphasis on product companies and also emerging and small and medium businesses. The services are also emerging, like in the form of disruptive technologies which are related to cloud computing, mobility, analytics and social media. There is an increasing focus on diversifying into new geographies and verticals. If you look at most of these slides are based on the contribution by the top 10 Indian companies. The majority of the business is still done with the US. It's about 62 to 65%. Europe is contributing from 25 to 30%, and the 10% is really the emerging markets. And the thrust by most of the Indian companies is to start doing business with emerging markets like the African markets. And that's one of the charter for most of the delegates who come as part of this third delegation to Africa. We've been talking over the last 1 week. Most of them are really looking to understand more about the African culture, understand more about the way things are being done here, and to understand more about the talent and the way business could be established. We have already some industry leaders like Mahindra, Satyam and Spanco who have already taken the leap of faith and set up base here. But there are a lot of emerging companies. The small and medium companies are the ones who are looking at making sizable investments into Africa and specifically into Kenya. Now, what is the impact of the industry on the Indian economy? It's a multi-fold impact. Number one, directly it is a contribution to the bottom line of the country, the GDP contribution, on averaging at about 7%. Driving the balanced regional development. Okay, this is a very interesting insight from India that we can probably pick some cues and see how this could be deployed in Kenyan context. Of late, there has been a rapid investment and growth coming in from tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Typically in the context of Kenya, places like Thika, Eldoret, need not necessarily be a Nairobi and Mombasa phenomena. That smaller places, which is where a lot of investment is going on, a lot of technology parks are coming up, and the talent is also available at source because of the engineering institutions and other colleges. But that is actually contributing to the majority of the growth. Empowering the diverse human assets, creating innovation platform. The biggest thrust, the tipping point, as I can say, for Indian IT industry happened when the Y2K happened, 98, 99, just before 2000. That's where really India capitalized on. When the Y2K problem came in and nobody had a clue as to how to go about addressing it, India had fortunately the talent, and some of the market leaders already had some technologies and frameworks to service it, and that's where really the curve started going up. And once the people started moving into these emerging developed countries like US and Europe, and once the Y2K phenomena started fading out, then they started upgrading, enhancing the skills, and then slowly we started moving into solutions, and now a big time contribution into product development and R&D is going on. Just talking about the socially responsible and inclusive, at NASSCOM we have something called NASSCOM Foundation. NASSCOM Foundation focus is to help or work closely with the IT companies in India and create this culture of corporate social responsibility. And there's a lot of initiatives that are being taken by IT companies towards CSR. So catalyzing India's transformation to a service-based economy. If you look at it, there's 4 graphs going on here. One is the trade, hotels, transport and communication. Second is the IT BPO sector, community, social and personal services, financing and insurance services. If you look at the curve in the bottom, there is a constant increase going on from the IT and BPO sector over the last 4-5 years, and by 2020 the projections are that Indian IT industry would be at about $300 billion. It took us about 20 years to reach from $100 million to about $100 billion. In the next 8 to 9 years, the projections are that the Indian IT industry would become at about $300 billion from $100 billion, which is current. So this is basically led by the service-led export-oriented model, which is still contributing to 9% of the India's incremental GDP. An interesting fact is that the per capita GDP contribution of IT BPO employees is 80 times that of agriculture. And as you know, India has fundamentally been an agrarian economy, but now we are moving more towards a service economy with the growing middle class, and IT sector is contributing big time towards the growth. And I've already touched upon this, about 8 times increase in direct employment. That's about 3 times multiples of, for every one IT job, there are about 3 indirect jobs that are being created. This is a snapshot of the employment opportunities for diverse sections within the Indian society. The jobs are being created mostly, but for about 56% of the employees are chief bread earners. 31% women employees in the year 2009, accounting to 45% of new intake. There's a trend. Most of the Indian women in the last 20 odd years have been homebound, they're homemakers as they call. But of late there's a lot of, because of the education exposure and the growing opportunities, a lot of them are moving into organized formal sector, and IT is actually taking a lot of them. There's a shift that approximately 20% of the female employees are also at the manager levels and above. And the parallel to Kenyan thing that I've noticed is that a lot of leadership positions in Kenya are led by women. That's a strength that you already have. Now, I think that's going to be a learning that we need to pick up from Kenya. 74% of employees are less than 30 years old, and 35% are less than 25 years of age. So the industry is still very, very young, and a lot of youth are being employed here. 5% of the IT BPO workforce are from economically backward sections, who are slowly started moving into this sector and also joining them in the tier 2 and 3 towns. 60% of the companies provide employment to differently abled people. There is an initiative that is being done by NASSCOM and NASSCOM Foundation. This is called web accessibility, that is making the websites and IT websites accessible for visually challenged. Visually challenged are those, because the technology is already there. I don't know if you have noticed, the keyboards are already ready. The keyboard of a computer is derived from the typewriter, and if you see, there's a small projection on J and F. So as a blind person, you can actually use the keyboard of a computer and you can start working on the computer, and you use the screen readers which will actually speak out whatever is the content on the computer. And this technology, and actually there's a policy that is being framed within Indian Disability Act, and a lot of IT companies are the ones who actually came forward. They are employing a lot of disabled people, both disabled with visually challenged and other disabilities. So as I said, approximately about 10% of the annual GDP contribution is going to be done by 2020 by the IT sector. 18 to 20% of it is going to be annual exports. One of the interesting trends in India is that the initial focus has been mostly on exports, but of late there is a lot of thrust and emphasis that's being laid on the domestic sector, and that's one of the growing sectors within the Indian context. So quickly talking about how we can have a win-win situation between India and Africa, Kenya. Historically, we shared friendly ties, and the South-South partnerships, and also the way most of the big businesses here in Kenya are being led by the Indian first, second. We have Tej as a classic example. You're third generation Tej, and there's a lot to learn from you, and there's a lot that we can learn and look at making investments here. There's a lot of mutual respect. The Indian community is highly respected here, but traditionally it's been dominated by commodities and natural resources, and now is the time for us to explore the possibilities of bringing in the knowledge economy and IT and some of these IT-led services. So as NASSCOM, the focus is to enhance these partnerships with the African countries, and the learnings that India has, and also the kind of experiences and the mistakes that we have made in India. Most of us as Indian companies and as NASSCOM are keen to share them and be the catalyst in making a change in Kenya. Closer economic and commercial relationships with India can help. Last year, our Prime Minister, Mr. Singh, was here in Africa, and as part of the Indo-African initiation, there is a commitment of about $5 billion that has been promised by the Indian Prime Minister for doing business with Africa. And Mittal, the president of NASSCOM, said that he's going to go back and explore the possibilities of how this initiative could be operationalized so that some of these funds are available for the Indian businesses who are looking towards investing into Africa. Africa needs no introduction. Most of us, as a delegation, we have got tremendous exposure in the last 1 week, 10 days, and some of us are already doing business. To just set in a context is the next billion, like 50 plus countries with a population of over 1 billion plus. To just set a context to India, India is like Africa. If I just squeeze African continent, it looks more or less like India. And each of these countries within the Africa are like our states or provinces, or the counties as we call it here. It's the fastest growing ICT market worldwide, 50% year on year. In the last 5 years, cellular market has grew by more than 5,000%. One of the learning that most of us coming from India really pleasantly surprised is the amount of mobile penetration that's happening here, and the way the mobile payments are being adopted. So that's one lesson that we as Indian companies would like to learn from here and go back and emulate in India. Like Eunice, you touched about the M-Pesa example. For some of us Indian delegates who don't know these facts, 8 out of 10 mobile payments that are done globally are done out of Kenya. And I think it's thanks to M-Pesa and Safaricom. Even a common man here is actually using mobile as for making payments. As much as security is a concern, the challenge of carrying cash with you is being solved because you are now able to carry mobile money with you, and you are able to securely do transactions. And one interesting phenomena that we really learned from the African countries, especially Kenya, is the usage of the USSD technology. USSD technology is not actively used much in India. That's the technology with which most of the mobile money applications are built. So irrespective of whether you have a smartphone or not a smartphone, you can still use it to be able to do it, and that's a great learning for us. And we are looking forward to seeing how the same could be applied or deployed back in India. Looking at the current trends within the African context, there's a democracy is kind of increasing, economic liberalization is happening, positive leadership is growing, and the corruption levels are decreasing, violence and political instability is reducing, which is a good sign. And improved optimism is about the robust economic growth. The investment climate is very favorable, rising stock markets are being operationalized. A lot of, I believe in Kenya there is an initiative now to set up a stock market for SMEs, which is also a very favorable indicator. The stronger currencies, falling interest rates, and the positive government actions that are being taken with the help of World Bank, European Union and African Development Banks. So which are some of the good interesting trends as investors for most of the Indian companies who can look at it. And because of these, there is an increasing need in the areas of e-governance, education, security, healthcare, and many other private sectors are driving this demand within ICT in Africa. And there is a lot of initiatives that are being done in India in terms of the e-governance. About 250,000 villages are being wired as we are talking in India. And thanks to e-governance, we have single window services for all citizen services. With just one window, all your utility bills and everything is taken care of. Those are some of the learnings, and there are a lot of companies in this delegation who have been involved in deploying, and we would encourage the Kenyan companies to collaborate and see how some of these could be deployed here. And as an advantage for Indian industry, probably this is the right time. Africa has a huge unmet ICT demand. Governments and businesses that were very apprehensive till some time back have realized ICT potential. A lot of encouragement being given in terms of investment directly into, I'm not too sure, Eunice, maybe you may want to touch about the repatriation and the investment. Can an Indian company hold 100% equity and stuff like that? Because these are some of the questions delegates had in the past. Maybe we can take it as part of the Q&A. Brand India is already #1 in ICT, so how Kenyan companies and Kenya ICT board can look at partnering with us and see how this could be leveraged so that you don't have to do the same mistakes that we have done in the past. It's a win-win opportunity as we see it. For Africa region, there's access to large pool of specialist manpower which can come in from India. You can leverage the innovative solution frameworks that have been already deployed to solve many of the problems, both for common man and for industry. And the learnings that India has actually derived, you can actually look at deploying them. And there are very innovative business models that some of the Indian companies have come out with in the form of private-public partnerships and also revenue sharing models that you can do with government and also citizen services. For India, it's a new opportunity across IT services, BPO and engineering services, and access to a relatively untapped IT services market. It's still very nascent, it's still at a very early stage. An opportunity to leverage the strong cultural, trade and historical affinity with India and de-risk from over-dependence on the English-speaking markets. When we say English-speaking markets as NASSCOM, I think it's mostly to do with the US and European countries with English speaking. So the demand and the vertical focus that can come in is e-governance. Again, Eunice, you reiterated and stated that you are looking forward for some of these. Education, telecom, banking and financial services and insurance, and the healthcare industry. So that's a quick snapshot, guys. So feel free to ask any questions. Yeah, Chola. There's one here. Can you go? No.
Hi Sriram. My name is Chola. I'm from CompuLinks, and we are an 18-year-old system integrators company in Kenya. And some of the innovations we have done in smart card-based solutions for higher education and biometric and smart card technologies. My question to you is that as NASSCOM, are you also looking at taking some of these technologies back to India, or your aim only is to, sell something to us in Kenya here?
Okay, thanks, Chola. As I started my presentation, the intent of this delegation is not to come and sell some of the products or solutions offered by the Indian companies. The intent is to learn from what is something like what you just stated, some of the innovations that you already done, pick them up and see how some of them can be deployed back in India, and also bring some of those time-tested products, methodologies and practices and the talent pool into Kenya, and then see how some of these Kenyan businesses can be benefited from that. The answer is yes. And I think I really encourage you to network and socialize with some of the Indian companies. And also you can reach out to about 1400 plus NASSCOM member base and see how you can forge alliances.